Alright, so in this video we're going to do two things. First, we're going to watch LBC's James O'Brien expose why Charlie Kirk's own supporters now suddenly want him censored. Then we'll see the unhinged Fox News meltdown that proves his entire point. If you're tired of the hypocrisy, show your support by hitting the like and subscribe buttons, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss a video. Now let's watch this together and I'll give my 2 cents at the end.
I got a few messages yesterday complaining that we were playing out clips of what the chap actually said, the self-styled free speech champion. And then I bumped into Ian Dale yesterday evening and he said, "Oh, you're getting a lot of flack on Twitter." And I said, "Well, what on earth have I done now?" And he said, "Oh, people think that you were wrong to play out clips of Charlie Kirk talking." I'm like, how can anybody be cross that you're playing out? I mean, what would he want in the aftermath of his appalling murder? Would he want his positions, his arguments, his messages to be more widely disseminated than ever before? Or would he want people to essentially censor him posthumously? How can it possibly be? I don't know. I gave up trying to work out what passes for the logic in the minds of these kind of people a long time ago.
Think about how insane that is. The disciples of a man they call a free speech hero are actively now demanding censorship of his own words. So it's not just a contradiction, it's a confession they're telling on themselves. And James can't make sense of it at first, but then he has a moment of realization. Check this out.
And the more I discovered about him during yesterday's programme, the more troubled I was by the response, particularly of Boris Johnson, actually, who talked about all he ever did was say common sense things. And then you read some of the things that he'd actually said, or you listened to some of the things that he'd actually said, and you wondered whether Boris Johnson, the nicest thing you could say about Boris Johnson was that he didn't know. He should have listened to yesterday's show because he was responding. And that, of course, is when I realised why people would get so cross about anybody reading out what he'd said or playing out actual footage of him talking. Imagine that for a moment. Imagine casting yourself as a disciple of somebody you describe as a free speech champion, and then he tragically gets murdered by persons as yet unknown, which is an element of the conversation that we're moving towards. He tragically gets murdered, and all of the people who consider themselves to be disciples of a free speech champion have hissy fits and conniptions over the words that he spoke, over people playing the words that he spoke. I'm not often completely baffled by bigotry, but I've got to tell you, that one's got me right in the confused zone of my brain. So you don't want me to find out what he stood for, even as I condemn his murder? Why don't you want me to find out why don't you want people to know what he stood for? Surely that's a grave disservice to his memory. You think he'd be ashamed of the things that he was recorded saying? You think he'd be ashamed of the positions he adopted? You think he'd be ashamed of the arguments that he made? Or are you ashamed of the fact that you agree with them and therefore you don't want anybody holding up the mirror?
And that's the sound of a perfectly sprung trap. It's not about honouring his legacy at all. It's about hiding an ideology. They are silencing him because they are ashamed of what he actually stood for, and they're terrified of what they see when James holds up that mirror. And what is that reflection? It's Kirk pushing the racist Great Replacement theory. It's Kirk spreading election lies that led directly to January the 6th. It's him calling Martin Luther King's legacy a myth and a fraud. They don't want to defend those words, so they just pretend they were never said. It's just intellectual and moral cowardice. But here's where it gets worse. They aren't just hiding their guy's words. They are manufacturing a new violent narrative to point the finger at a vague phantom enemy. Let's watch the raw footage of the meltdown James warned us about.
Trump gets hit in the ear. Charlie gets shot dead. They came after Kavanaugh with a rifle to his neighborhood. They went after Musk's cars. They just shot 2 Jews outside the embassy. Think about it. Scalise got shot, barely survived. It's happening. You got trans shooters. You got riots in LA. They are at war with us. Whether we want to accept it or not, they are at war with us. And what are we going to do about it? How much political violence are we going to tolerate? And that's the question we're just going to have to ask ourselves. Now, Charlie would want us to put as much pressure on these people as possible. Dana nailed it. This is unacceptable and has to stop. And it has to stop now. And everybody's accountable. And we're watching what they're saying on television and who's saying what. The politicians, and the media, and all of these rats out there. This can never happen again. It ends now. Greg's right again. This is a turning point, and we know which direction we're going.
So who is they? Well, it's anyone who disagrees. And that is textbook stochastic terrorism, which is just a fancy term for a simple cowardly tactic of using vague but violent language to light the fuse. And then you act shocked and blameless when a lone wolf in your audience inevitably sets off the bomb. You see it all the time in these MAGA movements around the world. You see it in the UK, and you see it with Trump's people especially. And this is the part no one's talking about. James's historical parallel is actually really accurate. He compares this to the Reichstag fire in the 1930s, where the Nazis used a fire set by one person as an excuse to declare a state of emergency, suspend all civil liberties, and begin rounding up all of their political opponents. So when people like Jesse Waters say, this is a turning point and we know which direction we're going, they're echoing one of the darkest chapters in human history. It's a real five-alarm fire for democracy. And the terrifying thing is, this isn't just theory. The bomb of stochastic terrorism has gone off again and again. And if you think that's an exaggeration, well, listen to what James has to say next. He has all of the receipts.
And how can you be opposed to political violence but supportive of a man who pardoned the January the 6th insurrectionists? You remember that footage, you saw it, you watched it. Donald Trump lost an election and his supporters attacked the Capitol and attacked the public servants working there and bayed for the blood of the actual vice president. You talk about all of the people that Waters guy just talked about, and it's right to do so, but you then have to talk about Melissa Hortman and her husband, targeted in their homes, killed by a Trump supporter. That's a matter of record. The man charged with the attempted assassination of Pennsylvania's Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro in April, a Trump supporter. 4 Democratic elected officials targeted in New Mexico in 2022. The man who tried to kidnap the Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and actually assaulted her husband Paul. That's something that Donald Trump Jr. made jokes about. Imagine if someone was making jokes, someone in public life, a really senior Democrat, was making jokes about Charlie Kirk's murder now. What do you think would happen to them? But Donald Trump's son made jokes about attempted kidnap and attack upon senior Democrats. Everybody who wanted to hang Mike Pence on January the 6th, 2021 was a Trump supporter. By definition, if you were there, you weren't just a Trump supporter, you were also spreading lies.
That's not whataboutery. That's establishing the clear documented pattern of political violence that the right-wing media conveniently ignores while they scream, they are at war with us. They demand a monopoly on victimhood while simultaneously endorsing the leader who promises to pardon the perpetrators of that violence. It's a perfect closed loop of hypocrisy. Their rhetoric inspires violence, they blame the victims, and then they promise to reward the attackers. The entire system is designed to escape accountability. It's hypocrisy on a scale that is just out of this world. So what do you think? What was the most hypocritical part of the right-wing response to the Charlie Kirk tragedy that you've heard? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons for more, and don't forget to press the notification bell so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching.